Happy Bank Holiday Monday. Nice, pleasant. I'm just trying to get a little bit ahead on a couple of jobs. This first one.
Holly's just said.
Huh?
Holly's just said.
Grandparents to be.
She found out that pregnant women put on between 15 and 30% extra weight on their thighs.
So she doesn't want to have a baby now.
No, she does, but on their thighs, and we've already got thunder thighs. And I said, all the better for working in the fields then. And she said, all right if we were cave folk. And I said...
She lives in Edinburgh, she must be one.
And I said, if Brexit and the Amazon carry on, it probably won't be long before we come into our own.
Yeah, she'll be in big demand.
She will.
Of being able to survive the winter.
Exactly, that's it. Anyway, I think it's because you lay down fat for the breastfeeding, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Yes, I know you're an expert in it. It's an acoustic.
Very high-actioned acoustic.
Oh yeah, you trying to bust something out.
Yeah.
Even I know that.
Yeah, I'm going to do measurements.
Wow.
Right, so I'm going to do a bit of this and then we can for a little walk a bit afterwards.
Yeah.
Get out and see nature and the cows and the stream and take the cat.
Yeah.
What?
My fat face is outside.
Oh,
Oh.
the ill, not very well fat face. Feed me. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to measure these measurements. That's what I'm going to do to them. Let's just see where we start out. We're going to start out with a last fret action of, oh my goodness me. Well, what have we got? 3. My eyes are giving away. 3.5, 4 mils on the bass side. 3.5. 4 mils on the bass side. Last fret action 4 low E, 4 mils. 3.25-ish mils on the high E. Now we've got what looks to be a Tusq nut and a Tusq saddle, so these may have been fitted later because the pins are bright shiny plastic, so I'm not really convinced that the whatchamacallits, the other stuff would have been such good quality if the pins had been crap quality. Now I'm looking for my thing. Okay, brains. Must have put it down here. Oh my goodness me. Nah, not under there, not there. Where? Okay, I have officially frazzled my brain. That's right over here. That's of course where I need it. I'm a bit clustered up in here. I've got too many guitars to build. Yeah, so just let's get a sense of it. What are we? 40 and 30, that's 70. Okay, so some of them higher than 70, some of them just under. Ouch. Not a great height. So we're going to take this down, we're going to take that down. So I think I'm just going to begin with this. Now if this is Tusq, as I suspect it is, I've said to Pete that on a sort of if it ain't broke don't fix it basis, I'm not going to get rid of this. If I can't cut it to where I want it, I've got a spare Tusq one here from another guitar and a bone one if necessary, so they've got backup. But we're going to go with the old-fashioned. Let's get it down to 0.3. 0.3 on an acoustic is always a good thing to do anyway, so and there's no reason why we shouldn't get it. It's got some, well I was going to say it's got some pencil graphite in there, but it probably doesn't. Oh, just one thing, before I do that, let me just do a double take on the neck relief. Now it is got a fair amount of curvature in it, but might not want that much. In fact, instinctually I don't want that much. So let us find a key that works for this. Again, that might be a bit of hit and miss at this point in time, because I don't know what the... Oh well, that's not too bad. Let's tighten it up and flatten this out a little bit. Oh, this is this guitar. I can tell you the model number. It's a CD650 SCE. This is very the neck is very, truss rod is very loose and very might be loose. It's not doing much. Okay. Yeah, it's the Classic Design series. Although it's a it's a nice looking budgety Fender, and it's a mahogany through and through. All mahogany, it takes pride in telling us, and it's made in Indonesia. Now that's starting to bite, so I guess the truss rod was more than likely just loose, and therefore the relief was doing whatever the strings wanted it to do. So I'm going to, just for starters, I'm going to take as much off as I can, and then we're going to see how it feels afterwards, because everything, what we want to do is we want to combine everything together to give this guitar a feeling of a nice new low, easy to play action, as well as it sounding good with some new strings, of course, and everything being cleaned up a little bit. Now, this is still got quite a curvature in it. Could be it takes a while. I've said before in videos, there's two very opposing schools of thought. Some insist that adjustments to your neck could take all day, and you'd be crazy not to allow it to take effect. Some say, look, it's wood, it'll just adjust immediately. If it's going to do it, it's going to do it straight away. You never can tell. Okay, that's nice and flat. Different tuning already. So now this is quite an interesting realistic dynamic, because I could fire away at this and go to 0.3 straight away, but I know I'm going to take quite a lot off here, and I know that reduction is going to also bring this down by a reasonable amount. So let's be what's the word, controversial? No, conservative. Let's go for 0.4 on this. We might even be there with this change in the neck relief. We might be close to it anyway. There we have it. We are. Now, what strikes me is somebody's dropped that. It's got a dent. When we do take this down to lower the action here, now this is going to disappear. We may find that we need to put a new nut in anyway, because this could actually now be too low. Once we've dropped this action down, let's have a look. Okay, I'm not going to touch that for a minute. I'm going to do the gross. Reduction first. So, as a rule, start with your relief, then do your biggest reduction next. So let's do that, and then we're going to see what we end up with in terms of nut slots. If they are already too low, then we will knock it off and we'll put another one in, and we'll finalise, or the last thing we'll do is we'll go down and reduce the nut slots on here. So I'm taking this off because I want to get the saddle out. I know what the measurement is here. It's 4mm on the low E, and what I would like is close to 2. Now that's a big reduction if we can get it, and my experience shows me that you can get that scale of reduction on most acoustics without coming into any trouble regarding the underlying frets. These frets are standard Fender kind of quality. They're a bit grubby, but there's nothing wrong with them. There will be some unevenness in there, but you can usually get down to about that sort of 2mm last fret action without any great risk of there being the unevenness, the intrinsic unevenness showing up and interfering with play. So that's pretty good. This is always a bit fiddly, because no matter how much you select this off, it's never quite enough to get this easily out. So what we're going to do is, we know that at half the distance, right, we would need, so if we want to reduce 2mm at that, as measured at that 12th fret, we'd need to take 4 off this saddle because it's twice the distance again. I think that's how it works out. Now frankly, I've never been entirely sure. This is, I think, yeah, this is a Tusq material. So somebody's changed these out, which is great, better quality. Like I say, they may have already done the nut slots to a point where it is actually too low when all this is adjusted down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim to adjust this. Oh, and I've got a new toy, a quality, God, this thing weighs a ton, a quality thing. Now it looks like that, but this one only has 2 decimal places on the whatchamacallit. I think this one has 3 decimal, right, and that I desperately needed that. This isn't quite accurate enough. Not a bad little thing, I'll keep it as a sort of desperation backup, but this thing, my God, does that feel engineered. Beautiful. 15 quid. I mean, 3 times the price of the other one, so hey. Okay, so let's just do a little calculation here. So we're going to go, let's draw it on the board. We're going to go from 3.25. Now I would want as a target ideal 1.5 at the last fret, and I would want 2 at the 1.5 at the high E, 2 at the low E. So if we just do the minuses, that's -2 in total, and this one is 1.5, that's 1.5, 1.75, 1.75, minus 1.75. So I've got to take off -2 and minus 1.75 as measured at the 12th fret. But that's 50%, sorry, not the 12th, the last fret. So that's kind of almost half again, it's not quite. So we could say, if we had to take it off, if we were measuring from there it would be double, but let's say here it's 1.5 times the figure. So let's go 1.5 times 2 is 3 mils, and that one is 350. What did I say? No. 1.5 times 3 mils. 1.5 times that is 1.75 plus, call it 160. I'm just guessing. It's a bit fiddly, but let's call it 160. And what did we say? 3. 3 and 160. And that's the amount I want to take off. So, now what I don't know about this is whether doing so will give me enough brake angle over the saddle for this E string. That's the limiting factor. So I'm not going to take all of this off in one go. I'm going to build 2 stages into this so I can stop and check. So if I divide those in 2 again, I'm going to do 1 stage at 1.5 and 1 stage at 0.8 on the treble side. So 1.5 and 0.8. Oh God, this is so wonderful to move. 1.5. I can roll it along here. Oh, I'm so happy. What did I say? 1.5 on the bass side, right? Right. 1.5 on the bass side. Now this isn't, again, this is sort of not exactly scientific because you can't get it exactly. 1.5 and 0.8. Wow, that's amazing. I love the precision of that thing. So it's as you can see, because it's different on either side, there's something of a slope going on in there. And drawing a line across it will give you, we'll have to take more off one side than the other and then kind of level up, which is quite an interesting freehand sanding technique to do. But there's my first mark, and then I'm going to double that. I could do it by eye probably, but let's go to 3, and so we'll just check that it looks like double the mark. Yeah, 3 and 1.6. So we'll do just in 2 stages, and we'll check, and we'll look halfway and see what the brake angle looks like halfway down the cut. Okay, so let's just try and line this up. It doesn't, it's quite difficult to manage. Now this isn't precise, right? You can see I'm kind of lining up with the pen, and it's going to maybe waggle a bit of the way off the line, but it's a good guideline. That's all it's for. Just finish that off. Preserve its little battery. God. gorgeous. Right. Okay, now I'm just going to tuck that over there. So all we have to do in this is cut this down using our sanding surface, which, as you can see here, it needs replacing, but it will do for this job. So I'm going to just hold this on here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and gently cut the gradient down a bit. So I'm going to press harder on this left hand side to get this starting to even up. When I see it even up, then I'll kind of even up the sanding, but until it is, I will keep pressing heavy-handedness on the left side, or the bass side as it is. Now I've also got to watch out for the 90-degreeness of this thing here, which I want to be very careful to maintain. So it's always a case of level out first, carry on sanding, stop, check the level, check the squareness. So that's looking good. It's cutting like Tusq, so it definitely is Tusq. Now hopefully the pressure is equal on both sides, so we're going to get an even cut all the way down. Looking good. Still fairly straight. The reason you want it square across the bottom is because it has to do with its pressing down on the piezo strip, the transducer I think it's called in proper words. A little bit more on the bass side to even that up. Check the line. Okay, we're on target. It's looking good. Now fairly even across the whole saddle. Still a way to go yet, and a little bit of shaving kicks up and gets in the way, stops you seeing the line, so it's quite useful to just trim that off with a sharp blade so you can actually see where you're going. Gives you a better picture. So there's about ½ mil still to go. We're fairly straight across the bottom. Now this sort of height, I don't really need to use the fine sandpaper because this will do the job fine. I might use it if I got exactly to where I wanted to go and then found I was a little bit off the 90 degrees, and I might use the fine stuff just to level me back up. But at the moment it's feeling very, very fine the way it is. So we should just about now be on the first mark that we're going to stop at now. Bless you, next door. And I need to tilt back just a fraction to straighten it up. I mean, I'm not actually stopping here probably, but it's good to see. Got to keep it, discipline is to keep it straight. Okay, so I've done my first run, my first cut, and I'm just tidying up all round. I'll get this out of the way for a minute. So the first thing I want to do is just get a feel for it and see what happens to the playing action, and then of course we'll see what happens to the pre-cut nut slots. Okay, fine. Again, it's just a good idea now to gauge the first fret, sorry, the break angle of the high E over the what sits saddle. That's looking quite nice actually. I wonder if that might be. I'll measure it anyway. So this is a guitar that Pete's bought for his son to play. And his son's coming back from, I'm kind of guessing university maybe, or trip away, something like that. But he's coming back in a few days' time. So we'll have this ready for him to play when he gets back. And of course, like all guitars, we want to give it the best possible chance of feeling like it's good to play. The thing I didn't mention about this guitar is that it's bellying like a lot of acoustic guitars. I'll show you with a straight edge in a minute, but it's rising up here. Now, you know, there are kind of limits to what you can achieve. But it was obvious that there's a lot of saddle height in this guitar as well, so there was a pretty large amount of room for improvement. But eventually it will hit the point where this is rising up too high to make any more saddle adjustments, particularly as the brake angle will disappear eventually. Well, soon. In fact, we might kill off most of that brake angle. Okay, so height-wise, we're still coming in at 2 point, nearly 3, which is, what did we think we were getting rid of there? We were going from, what are we saying? We were going from 4. Yeah, we've taken 1 off halfway. That's right. So we should be at 3, and we are just, actually we're about 2.75. So we're kind of on target. It's already much nicer to play. It's also flatter as well. Don't mind about the tuning for a minute. So all the sort of signs and indicators are that we go for more reduction. Well, let's see what this would look like at 2. That would be a very low action. Actually, we're at 2.5. No, you know what, it's not that much more. Okay, let's go for it. As originally marked. So all's looking good. The brake angle over here is still quite a lot. I don't think we'll run out. Again, somebody could probably mathematically work it out, but frankly, I'm just eyeballing it, and all I want to know is that there is brake angle left that will both transfer vibration through to the guitar itself and also or transmit the vibrations through to the transducer strip. Now, if in the unlikely event we go below what's feasible or what works well, then we can always take it back up. We can redo it or shim it, put a boot on it and stand it taller, but I think we'll be fine. I've got my Taylor Baby in the house, which has a very small brake angle, and it works absolutely fine. So it's a lot less than you would at first imagine. Okay, so now I've got my line, and I'm now going to follow it down. Now this again is biased, so what I need to do is just put some weight into the bass side and get a kind of balance up between the two, and I can afford to be a little bit careless at this stage until I get where I'm hoping to be. So we get a sort of basically straight line, and then we'll work on the straight line and make sure then we're even across the whole thing. And now we're going to just keep checking the squareness every now and then. That's tilting forward, it's leaning back I should say. So I'm going to take it and step it forward a little bit, lean it towards me, and then just bring it back up to the vertical, I hope. Now that looks okay. Still quite a lot to take down. Now I've got this further away from me, so if we want to make this a little bit easier, do where we were before. And just bring it up to there, and then we'll be closer to it. Tilt it forward a little bit. Flatten it out. That's looking alright. Again, trim down and see where the line is. Okay, now we're running a bit too heavy on the bass side, so we need to counter press down on the treble side and catch up. We'll catch up. Nearly there. Okay, getting there, pretty much square, that's good. Even across the whole thing, pretty much. And let's have a look. So a lot of dust built up at this point, which we'll get on the guitar, bone dust or Tusq dust, you know what I mean. And then we'll clean it off as we go through. Okay, so I'm just now aiming at getting this as flat and perpendicular as is possible. Make sure it seats nicely on the, what that thing is called, piezo. I think that's pretty good actually. We're still slightly short of the mark, so I'm being conservative here. I'm not overcutting. I think we could do a little bit more down on the treble side. So I'm just going to press a little harder down there for a second. But of course we have to catch back up with the rest of it because we want it to be even. We don't want to curve across the face of this thing. It's got to be universally flat. Okay, we're on the mark. Looks good. Anything it's tilting slightly towards me, so I'm just going to head it backwards upright a tiny little bit on the fine gauge and just let that square it off. Okay. There goes the blade. Right. Okay. So this is let's just check the line here. Yeah, looks good. So we have always these things, they get just a little bit, can get a little bit grubby by the time you finish sanding them and stuff. So it never hurts to get them, give them a little bit of a rub over with the old naphtha solvent. Okay, let's get some of that grime off. I mean, it's not a glistening white stuff anyway, this Tusq. It's got a grey look to it. That's default, but missed. Right, now we have the big, we've made the big adjustment. Now we're down at the level. Wow. You can see the difference now. Now this is where, like I say, we may find that we have to do another nut, and that's fine too if we have to. It's just the way it is. You swings and roundabouts. You know, you can't make the improvement without something else needing to change. But we'll see if it plays. It may just set us at a very low playable first fret action, but I suspect, yeah, I think we're going to buzz out any minute now. so it's playing, and I'll just have a look at the first fret action. It'd be nice if it works, but I'm a little bit concerned that it may end up sitting too low. That's not so bad. That's nice and low. I mean, we're below my typical target, but I'm not going to, well, I say I'm not going to mess with it if it works. I'm not going to mess with it, except I'm going to listen out for any pings. Now this is a 20.2, so we may be at about 0.25, which is quite, well, no, it's about 0.05 lower. 0.05 lower than I would normally go. So I think it's these middle two are calling the shots here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up these slots a little bit, and I'm going to just round out the slots. Now we know we're going to go on, I think we're going to go on 0.25. Let's just do it at that, rather than any sort of need to take the nut off. I'm going to see if we can ain't broke, don't fix it principle. But wow, this is low. So that's around 0.15. It's very, very low indeed. But the thing is, it's playing. So before I, junk it and put a new nut on, let's just have a see what it really is. Wow, we're sort of at capo, about 0.15 capo level. Truth is, that is very low, but I like it. It plays. Tusq. Let's just see if this is tall enough to be a direct replacement. I'm not sure I want to take all of these down to 0.15. We can do it. I mean, the first thing is they're all tight. That's my concern. So I would anyway want to slightly open up the slots so we don't have that gripping problem. Playable. It's the funny part. Actually, oh god, I need a piece of string for this part. I mean, let's just widen that as well. And then we'll use the, what is this, 42, 28, 28, 38, 28, 38, 28, 28. Yeah, that's about right. Oh no, other one. 38 to 42, that's good. That one a little run through. See, Tusq, the reason I often revert to bone is because Tusq is an odd material to cut. It really doesn't behave the way bone does. Bone is very dependable in the cutting department. So Tusq, yeah, just seems to do what it wants. Okay. A little bit of room. Room still. Well, this would be an unusually low one, but it's that kind of principle that if it's got Tusq in it already, which is good quality material, and if it's playing, just look at that. It's on the mark. What I'll just do, just in case that needs widening, we'll just do a tiny little adjust in there, just to widen it out if anything. Much there too. Again, we'll just open out the slot so it doesn't catch. A tiny bit with the file, but hardly any. Just really to shape the bottom of the slot as much as anything. So that is higher than that one, because that G is well low. Now we're at the kind of heights now that if I press too hard I'll be overcutting it in a split second before you know what's happened. So, and that's one of the qualities of Tusq, is that it really doesn't behave consistently. You don't really know where you are with it, so within a second, a split second, you can be over the mark. Now with this, as I say, ordinarily wouldn't go this low with the first fret action, but I'm prepared to change it out with another nut and redo it if necessary, but not if it isn't. I mean, if it plays really well, then we don't really need to. We have to be quite critical in evaluating it. Well, I can live with that. How about that? As you know, point of order, lower than I would normally go, but as you can see, entirely playable. And it kind of goes to prove one thing, and that is that the actions are typically, first of all, that the factory sets are a billion times too high, but it also goes to prove that the actions that I ended up going for is conservative and playing safe, leaving 0.3 or at most a 0.4. But this has got, I flattened the neck out quite a bit, which has improved the feel of the action around the centre of the neck. But even with a flat neck, even with a lowered action at the far end, we've actually got a first fret action that is light as a feather and actually plays surprisingly well. So I can't right now see any reason to alter that, just for the sake of knocking it off and putting it doesn't like that crappy old string, just for the sake of pulling the nut off and setting it higher. It's always a means to an end, and the end is does this thing play well? And if it does, then we kind of live with that. Plastic, very plastic pegs. I mean, nothing wrong with that, they don't have to be anything special, but is that a bit of broken, or is that part of the style? Not sure it went in like that, but okay. Thank you. And then the strings catch you everywhere. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this guitar a good clean. I'll also, oh Lord, I hate these strings, they catch everything inside. I'm going to give it a good clean. I'm going to use a fret rubber and polish the frets up just to bring a shine up to them. It's not going to be a high, a high shine polish. Oh, hello.
Tea.
Biscuits and tea at the right time. No, I don't mean it like that.
Put them in my hand because they'd melt.
I'm going to take a pause anyway, but thank you, sweetie.
Pause.
Pause. Right.
Cat pause.
Mind you don't fall out to the shed now. So, yeah, it just looks as it looks. Can't really do much about that. It's got a sticker on it which is looking a bit Pete, do you want it on there? Do you want it taken off? I can't really get an answer from you, so I don't know. I'm going to give it a clean all round. And tighten up this button on the back if I can, because it's loose. But apart from that, we're good to go. And then I'll clean this up, re-oil this, and then we'll restring it with these things. So I'll see you in a minute. So what I'm doing here is I'm using my skirted fret protector. Rather than kind of mask the whole thing off, what I like to do here is I like to just give it a go with 2 grades of fret rubber, and you can see it's I've kind of taken most of the stick out of this tape, but it's good as it helps to grip it a little bit more than you can with your hands. That would be all over the place. So you can just basically hold it down like that, give it a quick go, switch to the other one, and you're done. I mean, it's not, like I say, it's not the world's most beautiful repolish, but it livens up tired old frets, gets them back in the play, and it will get rid of any corrosion and stuff that's built up. Like I say, that little tip of using this flap of Gorilla Tape, or a square of Gorilla Tape, to hold the thing in place and just make the job of holding it so much easier. If you were just trying to hold that with your naked finger, shall we say, you'd be in trouble, because it would be all over the shop and your fingers would get really tired really quickly. And this, you can see all of this just helps to hold it in place without too much kerfuffle. Anyway, so I'm just going to go all the way down over these. I've given it a clean up already, but I'll do another one afterwards. I've given it a good old naphtha clean with a fresh rag. These fret protectors are quite difficult to use on their own. I've never found an easy one that kind of stays where you want it to, unless you do something like this. And then when you're using these rubbers, it's a good idea to cut the grooves out of them every once in a while if you find the grooves building up, because they won't put as much pressure on, or if nothing else, go across the grain so that you make a new groove in a solid piece. So like that. Although it tends to scuff the tape a little bit more if you do that, but it works. I tend to just cut a little bit off with a knife. There you go. Anyway, we're heading our way down. This is a good quick alternative to a full polish out, which I would only really do if I was fret leveling and reprofiling frets anyway, because it's a big deal. And here we're only dealing with cosmetic tarnishing, really. We're not dealing with any scratches that are problematic. Just old age of the frets, perhaps not having played much for a while. And once this is done, we'll put new strings on and we'll be good to go. I think my going across the grain isn't such a good idea, only because it's so wide that it scuffs the tape, which I don't want it to do. Otherwise I'll destroy my neat little protective skirt. Now it's 25 degrees in here, so it's a little bit warm to be doing this. And I shall stop after this, and then I'm going out for a walk in the fields to chill out and cool off. I have got a ton of guitars to do. All good, I'm not complaining. A lot of builds, builds to finish, builds to make. Another setup on top of this one of an electric guitar for Graham in Glasgow. That's a Floyd Rose equipped Jackson with what my small amount of research tells me is it's got a compound radius from 12 to 14 inch, and I'd be quite interested to test that out, because in my experience sometimes that doesn't bear out. Guitars, I've seen a lot of guitars that claim to have compound radii of one thing or another, and then when you actually measure them they go from something to something else, and I'm beginning to wonder if there is there some real difficulty or challenge in the factory sense of getting a very specific radius as claimed by the spec. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I mean, you wouldn't think so on a factory production line. It should be dialed into the CNC and away you go, but you never know. So I will measure the Jackson to see that's going to come off in a minute if I'm not careful. I will measure up the Jackson and see what I find in reality against my aluminium, no actually this steel, my steel radius gauges. And if there's any Americans watching, I hope you enjoyed my English pronunciation of aluminium. Stick that there, nicely just sticks when you tell it to. Get a bit of a whip down. Now what I'm going to do is, with this fairly grimy rag, I'm going to run down here and give the fingerboard a refreshing scrub. Just to remove some of the previous owner's DNA. I think Pete bought this second hand from somebody for his son, so it'd be nice to get a little refresh going so it doesn't carry too much of the residual bits from the other people. It's pretty clean anyway, but I'm just doing an extra once over. Okay, get in between there again, just make sure all the dust is away. Same here. And while I'm at it, just make my hands a little bit cleaner. What I will do at this point is get some oil on there. And I've got some Dunlop 50 something which I haven't got around to using yet. I just keep using this lemon oil because it's familiar. I don't know what the main difference would be, and I haven't looked at the Dunlop stuff. I inherited it in a bit of bag of spares from Paul, I believe, in a kit, spare kit. With the kind of, oh, I'll get round to using that one day. Okay, nice bit of oil on there, delicious. Okay, so the re-string and everything is pretty straightforward. Now we've got our actions and where we want them. The critical thing about this, and if Pete, you may have seen this on my other videos, but if your lad is watching this, you might want to take note. The critical thing about tuning stability on a guitar is twofold really. It's getting your first fret actions correct, and that means making sure that the strings go through the nut smoothly and cleanly, which is what I was doing my best to ensure in the beginning. That's the first part. And then the second part of the deal is stretching out all of the possible slack in your strings. Now as I'm loading, by the way, what I did was I put the ball in and I pulled it most of the way up before I pressed the peg down, so the ball isn't all the way at the bottom, it's kind of trapped halfway down. Then I put the string all the way on through the tuning peg and pull back 1 fret's worth, and then I wind on and I hold the taut string, I let it wind over the top of the loose one on the first time round, and then I push it under the loose one and pull the loose one up on the second time round, and that goes underneath there and it makes a kind of locking mechanism which is really useful for the minimum amount of string. So we've got a minimum amount of slack stored up there already. Go in here, put the pen in, pull that up first, then push it down. We don't want it popping up because it's sort of wedged on the ledge halfway down. You get a bang when you put it under pressure and suddenly it releases itself. So again, right the way through, straight, pull back 1 fret, wind it on, hold the taut one over the loose one, press it down as it comes around, and on the second time round press the taut one under the loose one, and you've got the locking loop. So it's a pretty straightforward thing. You get a bit gymnasticky when it turns, switches over to the other side. So you'll see me, the fingers doing, this wants to go all the way down, but I don't want it all the way down. Come on, do as you're told. Right, sit. Sit, boy. So this is the last of the easy ones. I like the 16 line stuff from the Fenders because you can do them all in the same line. under, up, directed under the raised loose bit. Hurrah! Now these might be lighter gauge. I suspect these are lighter gauge than what came off, so we may need to make an adjustment to the truss rod, because we may find the neck goes flatter than we want it to go at this point. Now what I'm going to do, just to make my life easier, I'm going to line these holes up in the line with the neck, sorry, in line with the direction of the string, because it just makes it so much easier. As you'll see now, we come through to the G peg, go through, check it out, pull it back one. Now here we have to hold it with the thumb, wind it round, keep that thumb tight, let the loose bit go under, hold it tight, crank up that bit, come round, and at this point switch over, keep it all under tension, and then push the held string underneath the loose string. And as it comes round, keep it all under tension still. It's just a game of keeping it permanently under tension. Right. I think this will be unrecognisable the way this thing plays actually. That's it, halfway down. It's quite a tricky thing that you have to feel your way. Sometimes these string balls are wanting to go all the way down to the end of the peg, but you don't want them all the way at the end. You want to trick them into coming halfway up to the point where they wedge and hold in place. Now sometimes it doesn't go under automatically, so we lift that up and direct the loose one under, and then this time round we pull up the loose one and direct the held one under. And it gets in the way and it's all over the place. There we go. Get that finger out of the way or else it gets chopped off. So as I was saying about the tuning stability, the first half of your tuning comes down to the condition of the slots, right? And if they've got any roughness or tightness, then they will, this thing doesn't want to do what I'm telling you, then the strings will catch and the friction will be enough to cause them to go out of tune all the time, because this doesn't want to go, it might pop up. Yeah, friction will cause it to go out of tune, because the friction causes a tension differential either side of the nut, which will hold it. The difference will hold until you bend the string, and then it will. That extra pressure will be enough to even out the tension, and in evening it out, that's what causes it to go out of tune. So the first part is getting the nut slots right, but the next and second equally important part is stretching out all of the slack that's in the string train, as I call it, whether that's from the beginning to the end of the strings, including the wraps that go around the tuning pegs. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut very carefully, cut off these excess bits, try and keep them away from chopping the wrong bits off. I've done it before where I've actually cut two strings at once there and paid a heavy price for it. Okay, so there's our nice tidy guitar end. Get rid of the stuff. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give everything a sort of physical pull, and if the peg wants to pop out, I'd rather it did it at this stage down the end here. That one's trying to lift up, but we shall see in a minute. So I'm just giving them a tug, get them seated, and then I'm going to get me a starting tuning up. How pretty. Right, that's the first bit. And the next bit is we get the strings and we push them with thumb and forefinger keeping most of the tension away from these points where the string goes over. But we're looking to this point just stretch out as much slack as is in these strings, and even behind the nut as well. Give them a tug. Just give it a good old stretch, and what you'll see is it goes out of tune again pretty quickly, and that's us shedding the built-in residual slack. Now do this 2, 3, 4 times, or do it until it no longer goes out of tune. Then you will have a guitar that will stay incredibly well in tune. And I'm only tuning it in between just to really hear, well, two things: to hear how much out of tune it's gone due to the stretching, and also to allow me to tune up and to listen and feel for any pinging in the nut slots. I want smooth linear tuning. In both directions with no ping. Feeling great. Ah, little ping. Keep an eye on that. Ping there. That's telling me I might just enlarge or just get a bit of sandpaper in that G slot and widen it. An amazing action, if I may say so myself. You know, some people, I mean, I hit that really hard a little earlier on and it played just fine, and some people get kind of freaked out at the idea of an acoustic with a low action. If that's what the customer comes and says they would like, that's what they get, and my experience is it just feels fab to play, and I'm sure that Pete's son is going to pick this up, because it will stay in tune a lot, and it will also be just light as anything to play. Should get less detuning now. Brilliant. Aha. D, tiny ping. What a beaut. Okay, I'm going to do one more stretch, and then I'm going to do a tiny bit with some sandpaper in the D and the G. Now, you may find that's quite common if you're going to get some gripping, some friction anywhere. You may find it quite common to get it in the G and the D, simply because they turn bigger corner than the other strings, so there will be kind of increased sideways pressure, which, if there's any unevenness or any tightness in the slot, it's often going to be there that it plays out. So I tend to use a little bit of 600 grit paper for this business. Doesn't need much. And just for this point, I could do it with that file, but I recognise that with this this nut, we're very close to the ground, you know, to the lowest possible setting anyway. So I'm going to just concentrate on sideways movements more than run the risk of going and reducing anything downwards. Okay, so 600 is pretty fine, and I'm just hopefully just going to take off that tiny bit of little tiny. You hear it amplifies that little ping. It just kind of holds the string for a split second. And don't ever ignore those pings, because they are the sort of indicator of what's going on. Now the idea is, once you're trying to widen them a little bit, what you're trying to do most of all is trying to widen them widthwise, obviously, and you're concentrating on not going further down in the slot. one more pull and then one more tune up and we'll be done. But that is a crazy low action. But Pete and Pete's lad, you need to do this much each time you change the strings. Do this much stretching and checking and tuning. The reward will be hours of playing fun. So D again. A bit more widening on the D and I am done. That's so, as you know, I'll make no bones about it, that's an unusually low first fret action, but as you can see, even with all the low reduction everywhere else, it still plays beautifully well, so I don't have a problem with it, and it's, you know, follows the principle of if that nut isn't broke, don't fix it, don't over fix it. I'm just looking at that. Looking at this, and I'm just thinking that that is just fractionally lower than I am happy with it. Damnations. Perfectionism. I am going to look at this. With cleaning up those slots, that's just gone beyond what I can live with. There we go. It's, you know, I tried to work with what was there, so there you go. The principle of if it ain't if it ain't broke, don't fix it has just reached its natural conclusion. In widening that slot, it just took the edge of that just down to where I wasn't comfortable with it. It's still playing, but it's just got a little bit of a buzz starting up, which I'm not prepared to live with. So, ladies and gentlemen, we do the kind of sad thing of chipping that off and having a look and see how our friendly replacement Tusq nut fits in. I'm just going to looking at the width side of things first of all. Okay, that could do with just bringing down a fraction. Not a big deal, but an important deal. You know, it just went below the minimum that I'm comfortable with, so I'm just going to take this down a fraction and put it to work. That's on the money. Tiny bit more. There we go. Yeah. Way. That was just going to end up a fraction too. What's the word I'm looking for? Fraction too close to the bone for my liking. Now this starting out pretty good anyway, this one, but we will need to make some adjustments. Okay, let's just tighten it up and see what we got. I'm going to do the middle ones first so that they all keep the nut in place. Yeah, this is actually pretty good from the outset. I could get really lucky here, saving me a ton of time. That is a stroke of, I would call that good fortune. A little bit of thinning down to do on the end here. Actually, is it? No, on which end? Looking at the line up of the strings, it's actually on this end here. Tiny bit to remove, but that is sweet. So I'm going to line this up and glue it down, and we're going to have, by chance, a perfectly cut Tusq nut, just the right size for this guitar, and that has got to be a fair rare occurrence actually. In other words, also known as getting very lucky, but I'm pleased with that. That will do. Right, out the way you go. Bit of glue, a bit of this. Now, the difficult part is getting this in the right place and sticking it in the right place. So we don't want much in the way of glue, but just enough to hold it where we want it. Now, get the right way around. And that's going to be there, and we want that to sit in there and that to overhang a little bit. Feels right. Get these on. And then, to lock it in place, cool EO. Okay, we're good. We're good. Yep, we're good. There you go. Little last minute drama, but yeah, out of it. Now what I'll do, I'll take a little bit of a Dremel to that when it's dried in place, and we'll just take off that little edge there. But I made sure that the strings lined up correctly down the middle more than anything else. If anything, a tiny bias towards the room on the treble side there, but there we have it. So Fender Classical Design Series CD60 SCE, all mahogany, action lowered, both ends, neck flattened out, new strings fitted, and all over cleaned up, but it will need a little last polish up in the house when I'm not making adjustments to it, because it picks up. It's so nice and shiny, it does pick up a lot of grease. I ended up, because the paper label was considerably, I'm just going to tap this down, the paper label was somewhat torn and crumpled. I took it off and cleaned up the patch where it was, because it was just looking cheap and nasty by that time. Here we have a standard jack socket, a standard strap button, which I just want to check for tightness, because it's looking like feels like it's coming undone. So that one's good. Let's take care of this one so it doesn't come undone. The battery's trying to escape. Stay. Doesn't seem terribly logical. What sort of... okay. A small Phillips. Very fine indeed. So put a bit of pressure on this and just see if we can get this to stay put. Yeah, feels alright. Okay, there we have it done. We've taken at least 2mm off the last fret action. And made it very much easier to play. And changed the nut in the end. Tried to save the original one, but just got just a little bit below the threshold. Actually, I could do this while we're here, just since we're here. And I want to get the whole thing back in its bag and ready to go home. So we'll just get the Dremel. If we can just get the Dremel up and running. And this is a very delicate operation. Just using this, working against the pressure of my hand actually, to bring this down flush with fingerboard. It's actually quite difficult to do, and end up with dust everywhere. It's difficult to do, and it's almost impossible to do with a file. So I found it's about the only way of doing it safely is with a Dremel, believe it or not, because you actually have more control with a Dremel than you do with a file. Which almost seems nuts, but that you can never get that flush like that without running the risk of scratching the hell out of the surface with a file. The secret is to hold the thing in tension with one side of your hand and the other, and if you can do that, then believe it or not, you can sort of keep it under very precise control. Yeah. Right, everything done, ready to go in its bag. A bit of dusting in the house because this Tusq stuff sticks a bit once you fired it around, but yep. There you go, thanks for watching.